marketing of services. We have thankfully now completed Unit 1 after devoting almost 18 lectures, if I am not wrong. Today we are going to start Unit 2, which is basically nothing but a recap of whatever you have studied in marketing management and to an extent in consumer behavior and advertising and sales management. Right? So what I'll be doing is I'll be talking about all the topics which are there in Unit 2 in very brief. Fine. The significant topics that we are going to discuss here in this particular unit include consumer behavior portion. Then we'll be having a discussion on positioning. Along with that we'll have differentiation also. And then we'll be talking about the new service development. So these are things which you have already covered in your earlier semesters. So let me start today's proceedings with discussion on consumer buying behavior. How do consumers decide which thing to purchase, which particular brand to purchase, when to purchase? So we are going to discuss that aspect today. Now please understand, if you have a look at the markets with the brands which are there in the market, you would find that they differ in two criteria. One is high involvement and low involvement, while the other one is when there's a significant difference between the brands and there is very few differences between the brands. So basically, high involvement means when there is a lot of risk involved with a particular purchase. The buyer is highly involved in the purchase. He collects all the information before purchasing. On the other hand, if there is no significant risk involved in the purchase, and by risk what do I mean? You do not need to spend a lot of money, you do not need to spend a lot of time. Your choice does not impact your near and dear ones. So the level of involvement would be much less, or for that matter, in case the purchase is not going to impact your image a lot, the involvement is going to be much less. On the other hand, if the purchase may impact your image a lot, if there is a lot of money involved, there is a lot of time involved, if your purchase is going to have great impact on your near and dear ones, on your friends and relatives, then the buying situation would be high involvement purchase situation. Is that fine? Now let me give you an example before talking about the 4 different types of behavior that can be seen here. Suppose you go to the market and you have to buy a toothbrush. Now tell me whether it is going to be a high involvement situation or a low involvement situation. It does not need you to spend a lot of money, only 20 rupees or 30 rupees at the most. You do not have to spend too much time also. Which brand of toothbrush you are using, it's hardly going to be material for your parents or relatives or near dear ones. So it's not going to have such a significant impact on them as well. However, which particular kind of toothbrush you use is also not going to have a great impact on what kind of image you are able to project in the public. So this is going to be a low involvement situation, right? On the other hand, suppose you want to purchase a deodorant, right? Now deodorant, again, you do not have to spend too much time or money. It's available in the neighborhood kirana shops also, and you do not have to spend, you have to spend at most 200 rupees. But then, and your parents may also not be very concerned with which particular brand of deodorant you are using, but the kind of deodorant that you are using might convey some image of yours when you are there in the public, when you are there with your friends or in a public place. Because if your body is emanating a pleasant odor, then naturally it would be easier for you to make friends with others, right? While if the odor is not good, naturally people would be repelled, people would be repulsed, right? So though deodorant may not require you to spend a lot of time and money, but still it can be a high involvement situation in some cases. Again, this is not true for all the customers. Again, which particular guy or girl you are going to marry? Of course, it is going to consume a lot of your time deciding which particular girl or boy to marry. It may not entail a lot of expenses, but then which particular boy or girl you are marrying is going to have a great impact on your parents. And I'm talking about Indian conditions. So naturally this is going to be a high involvement situation. Again, where do you do your BBA from? You may have to spend a lot of money, and more importantly it may decide your future career prospects. So it is going to be a high involvement situation. So I hope I'm making the difference between a high involvement situation and a low involvement purchase situation clear to you. Now, what do we mean by significant difference between the brands? Where different brands have different benefits. So that is what we mean by significant differences between the brands. So all the brands have different benefits, and all of them are very different from each other. On the other hand, you may call it something like a market situation wherein the brands do not resemble each other. Every single brand has a different monopoly, right? Some kind of a monopolistic competition wherein there are different brands, but they all have different benefits, different attributes. Fine. On the other hand, when the brands are having few difference, it hardly makes any difference to you whether you purchase a particular brand A or you purchase some other brand B. The brand, they are not very different from each other. Let me give an example of salt. For example, you might want to purchase Tata salt, you might want to purchase premium salt, you might want to purchase some other salt. Very few differences between the brands. So this is when there are not much differences between the brands, right? So when we take into consideration these two aspects, we come up with 4 different kind of buying behaviors. The first one is known as the complex buying behavior. And when do we see this? When there is a high involvement situation, because the brand is the purchase is very important to you as a customer, and there are significant differences between brands, right? So there would be complex buying behavior. What do we mean by this? You are not going to go to a market one fine day and buy in an instance. You are going to take your time to decide which particular brand to buy. You might want to collect information from your friends, relatives, then you might want to do your own calculations, then you might want to decide to take some advice from some senior individual also, maybe your senior professor in the college, or maybe the Gram Pradhan, or maybe a senior doctor, or whosoever you think is very much experienced. And then after doing all these calculations, then only you decide which brand to purchase, and that is why this is known as a complex buying behavior, right? And this happens when there is a lot of involvement. The purchase is very important to you, and the brands are very different from each other. Fine? Lest you forget what brands are and you get confused what brands and what do we mean by brands and what is the difference from products. Let me give an example. When I talk about salt is the product and the brand is Tata or Premium or Captain Cook. So they are all different brands. Fine? Right? Now let me come back to the discussion. Let us discuss this second one. Right? Dissonance reducing buying behavior. Now this is seen when there is a lot of involvement. The purchase is very important for you, but you are simply not able to understand which particular brand to buy because there are only few differences between the brand. All the brands are almost alike. So what do? You purchase a particular brand, right? Naturally the brands are not very different. So once you have made the purchase, supposing you have purchased A brand, right? And let's say there are 3 brands, A, B and C, and you have purchased A, and there is no difference between A, B and C. Now when you get back and when you start using A, you might want to try and compare how your purchased brand A is performing against the other brand. So you are looking for that information which will tell you that your brand purchase was a good decision. Your decision of purchasing brand A was a good decision. You have made an intelligent decision. So you look for that kind of information because this will reduce the dissatisfaction inside you. Fine. If you find some information that B is a better purchase than A which you have purchased, then you would start feeling dissatisfaction. A sense of dissatisfaction would come in and you would be dissatisfied, right? You would feel some kind of a dissonance inside you. So you look for that information which confirms that your purchase decision was the most intelligent one. You made the right purchase decision. So you would look for good information about the brands purchased by you. In this case, it was A brand. And you look for some negative information for brand purchased by somebody else, the other brands in the market which you have not purchased. So you are looking for negative information for B and C brands, and you look for positive information for your own brand A. Right? So this is what we know as dissonance, dissatisfaction reducing buying behavior. So you want to reduce your dissatisfaction. Fine. Now, what do we mean by low involvement? You have already understood. When there are not important implication of a purchase on your lifestyle, on your image, on how your parents respond to your decision. So then it's a low involvement situation where it does not require you to spend a lot of time and money. Now here what happens is, please understand, when there is a lot of difference between the brands, so you indulge in variety seeking buying behavior. What do we mean by this? One day you purchase a particular brand, the other day when you have consumed the first brand purchase, you don't purchase the same brand again, you look for some other brand. So you purchased A one day and next week you are purchasing B, then next week you are purchasing C, and this way you are experiencing all the brands. You are doing this because it does not involve a lot of money or time. Had it involved a lot of money or time, right, then probably you would not have had the luxury to do this. But since it does not require a lot of your money or time, it's a low involvement kind of a situation, you are experiencing with all different brands. Fine. Now, what happens when there is a low involvement situation and there are very few differences between the brands? So there is no use trying different brands because all the brands are of the same time. Right? So in that case, what do? You indulge in habitual buying behavior. What does it mean? You purchase a particular brand. Next time also you go and you buy the same brand. Next time also you are going and buy the same brand. So you are not looking for experiencing with different brands. The reason being, all the brands, they are hardly different from each other. So you are sticking to one brand, and this is known as habitual buying behavior. So you do not give it a great thought. You simply go and purchase the same brand over and over again. So this is what we mean by habitual buying behavior. Now let me give you examples so that you can understand this better. When you are deciding your honeymoon destination, some of you have got married, some of you might get married very soon, and some of you of course will have a great career and then they will marry according to their own wish. Fine, but whosoever gets married, they would be looking for some honeymoon destinations. Fine, wherein you go and the whole, along with your partner, the better half, and then you go and enjoy a few days after your marriage, right? So this is a complex buying behavior kind of a situation. Because it's high involvement, it has a great stake for you. Why? Because somehow if you have not chosen a good destination and if you've not had a good experience there, it would be a bad experience for your whole life. Because all your life you would remember, where did we go and which place did we visit after our marriage. So it's a high involvement situation for you, and different honeymoon destinations have different attributes. You may go to, for example, you may go to Nainital. So it's a different thing that Nainital offers. You may go to a place like Mussoorie. You may want to go to some other place, Darjeeling. You may want to visit Andaman and Nicobar Islands, or you may want to visit Ladakh. So they are all different. They have different attributes, and they are coming up with different values that they provide to you. So there's a lot of difference between the brands. Honeymoon destinations. Fine. Now, what about the situation where there is few difference between the brand, but the decision is very, very important for you, yani ki this one, dissonance reducing buying behavior. This would be observed when you are purchasing mutual funds and when you are purchasing health insurance. Now please understand, health insurance, if you compare, if you go to a health insurance intermediary, a platform which provides you information about all the health insurance firms which are there, the term used for these kind of platform is the aggregator. So health aggregator, if you go to a health aggregator like Policy Bazaar and go to their website, you can find different brands which are offering different benefits, and you can compare them, and you'd find that there is not much difference in the price, and there is also not great difference between what they are offering at a particular price. So the difference between the brands is very, very insignificant, very small. However, this decision, which particular health insurance you have bought or which particular mutual fund company you have bought your mutual funds from, will have a great impact on your future prospects. What if you get ill? What if you require some money 10 years down the line? Fine, you need to invest in a good mutual fund, and you need to have actually taken insurance from a good health insurance firm. So this is going to be a high involvement purchase. But since the differences are very few, then you go for dishonest reducing buying behavior in these cases. What about this low involvement product? Low involvement buying situation. You are going and having tikki, your favorite food, or any street food outside. This decision is highly dependent on your mood and the impulse that you have at a particular point of time. Why? Because first thing, it's a low involvement situation. You are not going to spend too much money, only 30, 40, 50 rupees at most. It does not require you to spend a lot of time. Your parents are hardly concerned where you go and have your tikki from, and it hardly is going to have an impact on your friends. So what you do is, for you, it's a low involvement situation. But there is significant difference between the brands. One tikki wala is very, very different from the other tikki wala, right? And so what you do is, you explore one tikki wala, then the next day when you feel like having another tikki, you go to some other thela. Then the next day, if again you want to have tikki, you go to some other thela altogether, and you try to experience all the different offerings which are there in the market, all the different brands which are there in the market. So this is called variety seeking. You're looking for variety, and this is possible for you because it's a low involvement situation. It does not require you to spend a lot of time and money. So you can spend a lot of time and money, and you can risk not being very satisfied. Because in any case, if you're not satisfied, you also haven't spent a lot of money on your time. So you look for varieties. Now let's take a look at habitual buying behavior. Now please have a look. Low involvement, what kind of hair? Generally you have the same hairstyle, and generally there's not a great involvement where you get your hair cut from. And secondly, all the barbers do the same kind of service. They perform the same kind of service for you at the same price. So hardly any difference between the barbers, hardly any difference between the different brands that are there. And so what you do is, you go to a particular barber shop and you keep going to him every single day whenever you need a haircut, or for that matter whenever you need a pedicure or manicure, right? So this is known as habitual buying behavior. You are not giving it much thought at all. You are not doing any comparison of one barber with the other. You are going simply to a barber shop, and there's a habit which has been formed, and you simply keep on going to the same barber again and again. So these are the four kind of behaviors which we see: complex buying behavior, variety seeking, dishonest reducing, and habitual buying behavior. And what kind of behavior would be shown in a particular instance would be dependent on whether it's a high involvement situation or low involvement situation, and whether there are high differences, significant differences between the brand, or few differences between the brands. Is that fine? Right. Now we'll be discussing this one in a little detail when we discuss this tomorrow, right? And for dishonest reducing buying behavior, what is the task for the marketer? The marketer needs to assure the customer of his purchase. Why? Because the customer always looks for some kind of a confirmation that his purchase decision was intelligent. So the marketer needs to do what? Needs to give these kind of advertisements. These kind of advertisements are known as reinforcement advertisements, and we've discussed this in advertising and sales management, wherein you assure the customer that his purchase decision was good. So this is what is the implication for marketer. Here you need to do what? You have to somehow attract the buyer into buying your own services. So you can give discounts, and other sales promotion tools can also be used, right? So these are the implications. Fine. Similar is the implication for habitual buying behavior also, and we'll be discussing the complex buying behavior in the next session that we'll have tomorrow. Now let us talk about the buying roles in a little detail. Now have a look. There are different buying roles. Now I have taken up a hypothetical situation where you have to buy, let's say, where you have to buy a pair of uniform, or maybe where you have to buy a fancy dress for the upcoming 14th November function. Now who could be the influencer in such a case? It could be your teacher in the class. Influencer is who influence the buying decision, right? So in this case it might be the teacher. The teacher might tell you ki boss, on 14th August you can wear a fancy dress and you could try to imitate Mahatma Gandhi. That would look good and you can win a prize in this fancy dress competition. So you get influenced by the teacher. But then who decides? Many places it is the mother who decides, right? So the mother will decide whether or not you have to participate in the fancy dress competition. If at all you have to participate, which particular dress you are going to bring, which particular dress you are going to buy, and which particular getup you are going to have, right? Are you going to look like Gandhiji or are you going to look like Nehruji? So she is the one who is deciding. Then who is approving it? Many a times in many households, the senior most people in the household, in the family, they are the ones who are the approvers. In this case, the grandparents and the grandfather and the grandmother. Then who is the buyer? You are the buyer. You are going to buy it. You go to the market depending on what has been decided by the mother, and naturally the decision must have been approved by the grandparents. You go to the market and buy it. Not only you are the buyer, but you are also the user, because you are going to wear that particular dress. Fine. And who is the financier? It could be your father, right? Because he is the earning member in the family while your mother is busy taking care of the household duties and tending to you and your grandparents. So she cannot go out and work. So your father is going out and working and earning something, and he is financing your purchase. So these are different buying roles which we have: influencer, decider, approver, buyer, user, and financer. Now please understand there are other buying roles also, but I am not going into too much depth. Please also understand that this is a hypothetical scenario. It could so happen that your influencer could be your father instead of the teacher as has been shown here. It could also happen that you are not the buyer, you are just the user. Fine. For example, the Johnson No Tears soap, the user is the child. The child is getting that particular, he is getting the bath using that particular soap. But who is the buyer? It's maybe your mother, right? Fine. So there are different situations wherein the roles would switch from one individual to the other. In some situation, for example, take example of the vegetable, right? It's your mother who is the decider, and your father probably, or maybe at times you might be the buyer. User is the whole family. Financer might be the father. On supposing you want to purchase a mobile phone, your mother may not be technologically savvy enough to decide which particular brand to purchase or whether not to purchase. So it may so happen that your father, who in earlier instance was the financer, now in this instance he is, apart from financing the deal, financing the purchase, he is also deciding that okay, we'll purchase this one. Or it may so happen that you are so technologically savvy yourself that you decide which particular brand of washing machine or TV has to be brought, and then your father finances it, and the mother does not have any role because she is not very good at understanding the technicalities behind a washing machine or behind a mobile phone. So different situations, different buying roles would be performed by different people, right? So friends, with this we are coming to the close of this particular session. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the purchase decision making. Thank you very much for your time.